The following program examines the Compromise of 1850 and the looming North-South divide. It is 1848 and the Mexican War has concluded. The United States has acquired northwestern Mexico, which has now become the southwestern United States. The land area is over 1 million square miles. This southwestern zone extends west of Texas through modern New Mexico and Arizona to California, and then north through Nevada, Utah, and western Colorado. A good natural reference point is the Great Salt Lake, clearly visible here from a satellite image. Some of the Native American nations in this region are the Pueblo, Navajo, Hopi, Apache, Ute, Paiute, Pomo, Chumash, and Shoshone. We will zoom into the southwest. It's important to remember that this region already had numerous settlements, some of which were very ancient. The Pueblo civilization, with sites that include Chaco Canyon and the famous cliff dwellings, are in this region. Santa Fe was settled by Spain in 1610, just a few years after Jamestown in Virginia. In California, San Diego, Monterey, Los Angeles, and San Francisco had been settled by Spain during the time of the American Revolution, so California had extensive Spanish and later Mexican settlements, in addition to the many indigenous Native Americans living there. In 1848, almost immediately after the United States acquisition of this region, gold is found near Coloma, California. In a strange repeat of history, the gold mania that had struck the Spanish Empire in the 15th and 16th century in Central America is now striking the United States and California in 1849. The gold rush means that California swells with settlers, so the prairie, mountain, and desert territories are essentially leapfrogged for California. California meets the population criteria for statehood in 1849. That year, California ratified its state constitution, and its proposed constitution forbids slavery. And now Congress, on the opposite side of the continent in Washington, has to vote on the admission of California as a state. The question looms: will Congress accept California as a free state? California's statehood presents a new sectional crisis. A generation before, in 1820, the Missouri Compromise had set the southern boundary of Missouri as a demarcation between slave states and free states. However, California extends above and below the Missouri Compromise line. In 1849, while California's statehood is in process, the United States is composed of 30 states. 15 states are free states in blue, and 15 states are slave states, shown in orange. Some of the maps in this presentation will show this free state versus slave state divide. Thus, the Senate is evenly divided between members of free states and slave states. This even division between free states and slave states is how the Senate balance between North and South has been kept in check. However, the South feared that if California entered as a free state, the balance of power in the Senate would then shift to the free states. Contrastly, many in the North thought that the recent Mexican War and the subsequent Southwest land grab was for the purpose of creating slave states in order to counter the many free states that were going to emerge from the Northern Plains territories and the Oregon Territory. In Washington, an earlier bill by David Wilmot of Pennsylvania called to prohibit slavery in the lands conquered from Mexico. Wilmot's proviso is rejected in Congress, but Wilmot had articulated the idea that new territories should be free. Congress is in tension, but an experienced statesman has returned to the Capitol. Henry Clay of Kentucky is in the Senate. A man of Kentucky, a state set in the center of the North-South divide, Clay attempts to find compromise to the sectional crisis. Henry Clay wastes no time. In Washington, on January 29, 1850, Clay proposes resolutions that are partly beneficial to free states, partly beneficial to slave states, and partly neutral. Clay proposes to admit California without Congress declaring it a free state or a slave state because California's own constitution has already declared itself free. Clay also states that because Mexico had already abolished slavery in the 1820s, it was unlikely that slavery would exist in the other newly acquired territories. Thus, the New Mexico territories will likely be free states, and Congress does not need to act on it. Clay proposes a give and take on slavery in the nation's capital. In the favor of free states, he offers to forbid the sale of slaves in the District of Columbia. However, in the favor of slave states, Clay states that slavery as an institution could continue in the capital. Interestingly, Clay states that Congress should not abolish slavery in Washington unless the people in the District of Columbia and the people of Maryland agree to it. In addition, the slave owners would need to be compensated if emancipation was realized in such a manner. So on the one hand, Henry Clay protects the institution of slavery from congressional interference, while on the other hand, he also provides a means with which a local population can abolish slavery. In the favor of the slave states, the United States would pay the standing public debt of the new state of Texas. Clay also proposes a strong fugitive slave law and to prohibit Congress from interfering with state slave laws. Henry Clay laid forth a give and take. It was not enough. On the next day, on January 30th, 1850, the New York Herald reported that the compromise of Mr. Clay, presented this morning, roused up the whole South from Virginia to Texas in opposition to it. Upon one point or another, his scheme was literally demolished. Many Southern congressmen will not accept any limits on slavery's expansion, and many Northern congressmen are resistant to slavery's expansion into these new territories. Over the next several months, Congress, delineated between North and South, will argue over these points. The word disunion begins to appear in the newspapers. Congressman Robert Toombs of Virginia is one of the proponents of disunion. Frictions between Northern and Southern congressmen reach a boiling point. In February 1850, Congressman William Bissell of Illinois argues with a Mississippi senator over which state's troops did what at the Battle of Buena Vista in the recent Mexican War. The dispute becomes a public feud, and a duel is scheduled. Muskets at 15 paces. The Mississippi senator involved in the upcoming duel is Jefferson Davis. However, Jefferson Davis's father-in-law, President Zachary Taylor, intervenes, and the duel is called off. Debate over the West continues. Congress in 1850 has 11 members from the newly established Free Soil Party, an anti-slavery party that elected representatives in the North. The Free Soil Party shows that a large bloc of Northern voters by this time have made anti-slavery their primary cause. At this time, William Seward, senator from New York, emerges as a leading abolitionist voice. The abolitionists are not interested in compromising on the issue of slavery's expansion. On the other side, the voice of the plantation-class South is embodied in the aging figure of Senator John C. Calhoun of South Carolina. Calhoun tells the Senate that the agitation of the subject of slavery would, if not prevented by some timely and effective measure, end in disunion. Calhoun will not accept any limits on slavery. While many congressmen become more entrenched, others try to find a middle ground. Daniel Webster, senator from Massachusetts, attempted to gain support for a North-South compromise. A number of these statesmen are aging. On March 31st, John C. Calhoun dies. In July 1850, the issue is further complicated by President Zachary Taylor's death. He is superseded by his vice president, Millard Fillmore. Also in July, Henry Clay's compromise proposals are defeated, but his framework remains in the background and part of the conversation. Thus, California is still waiting on congressional approval for statehood. The North and South remain deadlocked on slavery, and the future of the new Western territories is yet unresolved. But Senator Stephen Douglas of Illinois has a plan. Instead of Congress agreeing to a single bill incorporating a litany of give and takes for both sides, Douglas proposes that each component of the compromise be a separate bill. This way, Congress is not stuck at an impasse over finding an agreement over numerous items in a single large bill. The items now can be passed individually. Douglas has long been a proponent of popular sovereignty, the idea that the settlers in a territory should determine if that territory will enter the Union as a free state or a slave state, rather than Congress determining a new state's status. By September 1850, individual bills are ready for congressional approval. Some favor the free states, others favor the slave states. 3 bills are passed on the western lands in one day. On September 9th, Congress admits California, the new state's constitution founding it as a free state. The senatorial balance is now tilted in favor of the free states. On the same day, Congress establishes the territorial government for Utah. The act states that, when admitted as a state, the said territory or any portion of the same shall be received into the Union with or without slavery, as their constitution may prescribe at the time of their admission. Thus, popular sovereignty is the law for Utah. Also on September 9th, Texas's western boundaries are established, and the land west of Texas is established as a territorial government of New Mexico. The bill states that the territory of New Mexico, when admitted as a state, the said territory or any portion of the same shall be received into the Union with or without slavery, as their constitution may prescribe at the time of their admission. Thus, popular sovereignty is law in the territory of New Mexico. So in one day, September 9, 1850, California is admitted as a free state, the Utah Territory is delineated, and slavery there will be determined by popular sovereignty, and the New Mexico Territory is delineated, and slavery there will likewise be determined by popular sovereignty. On September 18th, Congress approves an amendment to an old fugitive slave law from 1793. The amended law requires citizens, even those living in states where slavery is illegal, to hand over runaway slaves to marshals. Any person aiding runaway slaves will be fined or jailed. Marshals, in turn, are required to pursue fugitive slaves or they will be prosecuted themselves. In effect, the fugitive slave law criminalizes slaves who run away, as well as any white person who aids in their escape. On September 20th, Congress passes an act to suppress the slave trade in the District of Columbia, which makes the buying and selling of slaves illegal in the capital after the following New Year's Day. President Fillmore signs the bills of legislation. These bills, passed independently, are collectively known as the Compromise of 1850. Many Americans believe the Compromise of 1850 had finally solved the crisis, but the Compromise's inclusion of a rigorous fugitive slave law required Northerners to cooperate in the enforcement of slavery. It was now a punishable crime to help runaway slaves. Those working stations on the Underground Railroad were now criminals. Bounty hunters from the South began to appear in northern towns looking for runaway slaves. White people who did not cooperate with bounty hunters could be tried and jailed for interfering with arrests. Northerners saw free African Americans in their communities, who they had known personally since childhood, wrongfully captured by bounty hunters and sent south into slavery. The fugitive slave law brought the fingers of slavery into northern towns. Northerners were appalled that slave catchers were coming into their towns. The abolition movement was now widespread in the North. In 1850, Harriet Tubman's Underground Railroad is in operation, and other stations are emerging across the country. Thus, the Compromise of 1850 brought slavery, in a literal sense, to the front door of people in the North. Northern printers began publishing the Fugitive Slave Law along with a listing of all Northern congressmen who voted in its favor. Instead of easing the North-South divide, the Compromise of 1850, with the inclusion of a rigid fugitive slave law, brings marshals and bounty hunters into the North, personalizing an issue that had previously seemed far and away.